Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar, Fine Designing Trends in Hospitality Design. Just to get us started, a few housekeeping items. All of your videos are disabled and you are muted. The Q&A and the chat are available, so please submit your questions as they come to you throughout this webinar. And lastly, a recording will be shared with everyone who registered afterwards. So feel free to look for that and share it out with your coworkers, your colleagues, anyone who may have missed today's webinar. So, all right, let's go ahead and get started. For my panelists out there, I am going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen and show my video. If you could follow suit, please. Hi, thank you, everyone. Everyone looks so great. So welcome to everyone out there. My name is Lindsay Rogers. I'm MORTARR's community manager as well as a customer success manager. And I just want to give a brief thank you to everyone for joining us today. This month, MORTARR is focused on the hospitality industry and how we are now slowly starting to get back to some kind of normal. And we were thinking for our webinar this month is to bring a panel of professionals with different experiences together to discuss. So welcome to my panelists. I'd love for each of you to introduce yourselves, say a little bit about you and your role, as well as your company. So Jered, let's go ahead and start with you.
Sure, thanks, Lindsay. My name is Jered Slusser. I am the Northeast and Midwest Market Manager, as we call it here at Pioneer Millworks. I joined our company back in 1997, fresh out of design school, and just decided I didn't want to draw things anymore. So I have a lot more fun getting to be creative and make things with wood that then we can present to designers around the world for use in their projects. So thanks for having me, and looking forward to this.
Great, thank you. And Angela, we'll go on to you next.
Sure. Hi, I'm Angela Dewar. I'm a senior interior designer at Bergmeyer. We have offices in Boston and LA, and we do everything from architecture, interior design, branding and graphics, and just kind of overall strategy surrounding design in general. I do still draw, Jered, and I'm happy to be here.
Oh, good, great. And then Gabrielle, last but not least.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gabrielle. I am the Materialista at Architectural Systems. We are a leading global resource for interior finishes for all market segments. And I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
Oh, great. Great. Thank you so much, everyone, for that brief introduction. I think what we'll go ahead and do now is just go ahead and get started with our questions. So the first question I have is a group question. So I'd love to hear feedback from each of you. So if you had to choose one word that would best describe the most important experience for guests in hospitality spaces, what would that word be? Angela, if you'd like to start.
Sure. I think especially given the circumstances that we've been through the past year and a half, I think the word that I would choose is empathy. I think in hospitality, the restaurant owners and the hotel owners always have shown empathy toward guests because we're here to create spaces that make you feel a certain way, make you feel excited, make you feel comfortable, make you feel welcome. But what happened this past year is a lot of that role of being empathetic towards others kind of got flipped. And I think a lot of guests kind of came out and showed their support to their local restaurants and hotels where they could. A lot of guests were tipping over and above what they normally would because they know the hardships that restaurants were going through. And so I think everyone in general kind of showed a little bit more empathy than they previously did. And I think that's a wonderful thing. And I hope it continues after this.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that too. I love that. So Gabrielle, what about you? What's a word you would use to describe?
A word I would use is materiality. Materiality refers to people's heightened sensibility to their locale, their kind of lifestyle property, and the authentic experience that they want to have. And materials really help tell that story.
I love that. And Jered?
Immersion is a word that comes to mind for me, especially right now. People want to be outside their homes, and especially the past week as things have really changed here in the US. people want to get anywhere outside their homes. And I think to transport somebody to those places, you have to immerse them in the experience, whether it's dining, whether it's a hotel. And the more authentic the materials are that are surrounding them, the more immersion they're going to feel within that space. So it comes into play with theming and the overall concepts. But really, regardless of the hotel caliber, the restaurant caliber, regardless of what type of a space it is, the materials are really coming into play there and helping to immerse you in that experience.
Oh, I love that. Great. Thank you so much, everyone. And so Gabrielle, how does your product or your approach to design support spaces like bars, restaurants, and hotels?
So ASI's approach to design is really the power of materials and how they can translate the brand and to tell stories. So using unique and innovative products to create the narrative and enhance the space and evoke a mood and transform those places to create that sense of place through materials.
Great, thank you. Thank you. And Jered, so when it comes to guest experience, and aesthetics, they kind of go hand in hand when designing spaces within this sector. How do you balance function, durability, and the aesthetic?
So when I work with designers and architects on their projects, I want to know as much as I can about the design and how every surface is going to be interacted with. So I want to know, does the wall paneling need a fire retardant? Does the surface need to be cleaned regularly? And how does it need to be cleaned? What material is the best fit for the design? And can it meet those first two requirements? You have to think about budget, and that always comes into play no matter what kind of project we're talking about. So I really work with the project team to establish those priorities, which can vary from one space to another, one wall to another within a single space. There might be a focal wall that's costs a little bit more, but it might present the branding perfectly. And then other less prominent surfaces would use a similar material, but maybe at a different dimension or a different finish that might help to offset the cost of that focal wall. Or there might be wall cladding where guests are in contact with it, but the ceiling wants to match, but nobody's ever going to touch that. So we can finish it a little bit differently and get some different results there. Maybe one has a different sheen to it than another. Maybe one has a fire retardant and one doesn't. So because we're so diverse and integrated vertically, we're able to really customize everything for the project and make it all come together as a nice cohesive palette. So the balance that we find is at the end of that journey, so that the design team and everybody involved in the project has been guided through that process, looking way ahead from just construction and into the long-term use of that space. And so everybody's on the same page. And now we have that perfect balance that everybody's on board with.
Yeah, and it really provides just a great experience overall for those who are enjoying this space, which would be the ultimate goal. So great, Absolutely. Thank you for that. So Angela, what advice do you have for those who are currently planning new hotels or restaurants? And do you have any recommendations for selecting the professionals and products that would go into that space?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what everyone is kind of craving right now, as Jered alluded to as well, is experiences. We've all had a year of kind of staying home and you know, keeping to ourselves. And I think we're all ready to get out and experience something new and socialize. And I think what hotels and restaurants can do now and probably, and you know, already have been doing, is kind of take a step back and think about what parts of my business are thriving, what parts of people did guests love, and what parts can maybe we improve upon. And as someone who's a designer, but also as a consumer, I would love to be able to, you know, walk out in a short amount of time now and go to my favorite spot, but see something a little bit different there, see something new, see a little bit of an improvement, some different type of experience that maybe they didn't have before. Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, whether that means like upgrading your patio seating or even carving out, I've seen places carving out some of their interior space to be more of an all-weather space. I think we're just like, yeah, we're all craving kind of those experiences, and it would be wonderful if, you know, some of these places could kind of give that to us. And I think even through branding and other types of design pieces, we can, you know, it would be a great opportunity to kind of upgrade that space.
Yeah, I think so too. Thank you for that. So Jered, on to you. Last month, Mortar spoke a lot about sustainability. You know, Earth Week was last month, and I'm curious how you think the shift to green will impact restaurant and hospitality design.
Sure. Yeah. I think the push for sustainable design, I mean, you can almost relate it to the new push for sustainability in food. And look at how everyone wants to know where their ingredients come from and eat minimally processed foods and things in restaurants nowadays. And that goes from fast food right through to fine dining. So many owners and designers want to do the right thing environmentally, but it's not just because they want to do it because it makes them feel good. They want to do it because it actually gives them something to talk about with their guests as part of, to Angela's point, the experience. It's part of being there in that space. You never walk into a restaurant and see a sign that's up on the wall that says, here in this restaurant, we use the highest VOC rated materials possible, and everything was clear cut from ancient rainforests. But you do see signs that say, we save water by not washing towels every single day in a hotel room, or this place is partially powered with solar, or the wood that was used on this wall was salvaged from a barn in North Carolina or something. So really, I think people are getting into this without necessarily consciously making that decision to get into it. So when you stay in the hotel, when you go to a restaurant, you see that these things really matter to guests. They wouldn't be bringing them up as owners if it didn't. So because it matters to them, part of that environmental discussion also comes up with the sourcing of the materials too, and the distance that those materials travel to get to wherever they're being used. So by keeping our sources as close as possible to the projects, we're able to also then look at things as far as longevity when there's expansion, when there's repairs, things like that need to be done. We're now not having to go halfway around the world to get the material to do that. It's something that stays close to home. So I think there's a crossover between the functionality and the environmental impact of the decisions that are made early on in the design process, and how those can help ownership further down the line in the project as it lives on.
Yeah, and I have to say too, here at Mortar, I know that we're specifically seeing companies who want to source more sustainable products. And now, granted, I haven't been in this space for that long, but just in my tenure of being here, I have personally seen that that is like a want and a need in the space. You know, that's why, Mortar's been trying to understand more and be more involved and just have that knowledge base so that when somebody asks for it, we know what it is that they're talking about. So I love what you're saying about that too. And a second thing too is funny. You had said, maybe when you walk into a business, a hotel, let's say, they're going to mention the solar panels and washing of the dishes or the towels or whatever that is. But I almost wonder if the people coming into the hotel may not know or be familiar with all the other things that are taking place too. So it's like the hotel could put it out there, but it may just not resonate, with the visitors and the viewers. And I think, me as a consumer, I'm becoming more knowledgeable in those things because they're important to me. So just my thought on it.
Yeah, and a lot of boutique hotels are now, and boutique chains in particular, are really crowing about some of these environmental steps that they're making. And I've seen some other brands too, in particular locations, that are talking about it, but also seeing it in restaurants and especially in retail. It's been something where they really have often talked about the materials that are being used in the spaces and where they come from or what they do or don't do for the environment, really. I mean, it's important stuff.
As it becomes more important to the consumer, it's almost like this weird trickle effect. It's like, as it becomes more relevant and important to a consumer, it will become more prominent to the companies who are building the spaces or designing them, whatever it might be. So, well, thank you. Thank you for that, Jered. So, Angela, on to you next. So how are you seeing hotels, restaurants, and just the hospitality industry overall rebound from the COVID-19 pandemic?
So hospitality spaces were hit pretty hard, I think, as we all know, and they're taking it in stride. But I think what kind of the biggest spotlight that's on us now, I think, is health and wellness, which seems pretty obvious. But I think in the hospitality industry, it's not just about our own personal health. It's also about the health of those around us and the systems around us. So, we want to go into a space and know that we're, you know, where our food is coming from, like Jered is mentioning, and, you know, converting menus to be maybe more plant-based. I mean, I noticed that 11 Madison Park has, you know, they have like a $350 tasting menu that was meat, and it had tuna tartare, and it had all these, you know, delicacies. It's going completely vegan. And the reason for that was because they noticed that during the pandemic, you know, there were so many people that were food insecure, and they were giving back to the communities and realizing like we could do something bigger than just, you know, than feeding people these foods that are maybe not sustainable for society. You know, it takes a lot more energy to make a steak and to raise this cow than it does to grow vegetables. So I think health and wellness for our communities and our systems is really important, and the hospitality industry is kind of stepping up to become a part of that. So yeah, I hope we're going to get to see more of that, and it's already happening. So it's exciting.
Well, and it's so funny that you mentioned that one restaurant in Manhattan, because I think that was a huge, I mean, I read about that in the news, and this one, it's a Michelin rated restaurant who's now removing all meat and completely going vegan. And at first, when I heard that, being a meat eater myself, I'm like, oh my gosh, who is going to follow suit? Is it going to be hard for me to find a steak if I want it? But when I started to do a little bit more research on what they're doing it for sustainable reasons, and you start to really research why they're choosing to do that, it's like, I don't know, knowledge is power, you know.
Yeah.
You know, continuing to learn and understand things from another perspective. So interesting that you brought that up. And, you know, that was such a great question too. How are these industries kind of rebounding from that? Any feedback, Jered and Gabrielle? I feel like I'm going a little off script here, but I just felt like that was just such a great question. And I'd love to know, you know, any feedback you have on that. I mean, things have really, even just this past week, you know, the mask mandates have lifted, and, you know, people are being a little bit more free to come back to what is normal. So any feedback on that? I'd love to hear.
Go ahead, Gabrielle.
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, health and wellness is obviously a huge concern for the A&D community. And with that said, you know, ASI met the demand for people want to feel like they're in a clean space and hygienic. And of course, like you're saying, everyone is paying very much attention to that, right? So you want to have the, you want to make sure that the materials that you have are cleanable and can withstand all the industrial cleaners and all that stuff. And yeah. So.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point too, is like the strength of these products that we're putting in. I mean, we're putting them under so much more pressure now than ever before, you know, trying to remain clean and, you know, making people feel safe when they come into those different spaces. So that's a really good point.
And yeah, and health and wellness, I mean, it's always been a big, we've always have a big conscious for that. And a few years back, we had worked on an Even Hotel actually, and their whole brand was about health and wellness and how the materials that were used for that space. Everyone wanted to know that they were natural, and they used the hardwoods on the wall and natural porcelain on the floor, and even the guest rooms were had cork for the flooring. So, and their guest rooms it was made for the health and wellness traveler who wanted to stick to their health and wellness routine. And they even had really nice cues around the hotel that said, they'll have big water stations that say, stay well and stay hydrated. Or, you know, a journey starts with a journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step, you know, like things like that. So we've always been involved with that. And I love that it's obviously a big concern now as well. So.
Oh yeah, definitely. And even as a consumer ourselves, I mean, that's something that we're always looking towards, is how healthy can we be? How can that creep from our everyday life into our vacation life or our going out to life? So, well, great. Jered, any feedback on that?
Yeah, I was just going to say the thing that we're seeing a lot of is the dramatic uptick in outdoor spaces for restaurants as well. Even chains that have been completely indoors are now looking outdoors. And I think even in the colder climates, like here in the Northeast, we're going to see this continue to grow. Unfortunately, you have to provide some sort of heat source for those outdoor, you know, times when it's too cold to be out there without it. But I think that we're going to see more and more of this as people come to kind of realize that the air is healthier outdoors no matter what. Well, in most places. There's healthier outdoors no matter what. And it's better to be out there. It's better for your body to be out there rather than be indoors in artificial air all the time, doing things like dining and such. So eating outdoors also, it's going to present new challenges for us on the design side and the materials side with Gabrielle here, because you're really going to end up having to look at the longevity of materials out there and how long they're going to last, that also go along with the design and with the theming and all that. So it's going to be interesting, but I'm kind of excited about it. I personally would love eating outdoors every single meal if I could. So
definitely. And Jered, where are you located? Oh, sorry, Gabrielle.
I think it's definitely pushing the creativity, you know, to create those outdoor spaces. So.
Yeah. I know I'm personally interested to see how areas that experience 4 consistent seasons, East Coast, Midwest, how they'll be able to incorporate some kind of that freshness of the outdoor air into their spaces, regardless of what the Mother Nature is bringing in. So, Jered, you're located?
I'm in upstate New York. I spend plenty of time down in New York City and out in Boston. And even though it's the sidewalk in the city, I'd still love to eat outdoors rather than being inside myself.
Yeah, I know you can always bring a little heater around, so.
I've seen spaces even that don't have patio access or don't have street access, and they've actually taken space from inside and carved it out. So whether that's like adding garage doors, or it's even like opening up the walls completely and kind of creating like almost like another internal wall, so they almost can create a patio, and it has a roof over it, so it's actually like really conducive to being somewhat like 3 seasons, even 4 seasons. I think we're going to see a lot more of that, which is great.
Yeah, I think so too. And it's exciting to see how everything's evolving, So that's my favorite thing, is when you go back to your favorite restaurants and you can see the changes that they've implemented or how they're trying to make it better for you. It feels good. So, well, great. So thank you for that. And Jered, my next question actually goes to you. So, due to COVID, people have been spending more time at home than expected. And how have you seen commercial design, even hospitality or retail, creep into the aesthetic or the design of residential?
So we started seeing this a little bit before even the pandemic, but people are starting to bring some things from the retail world into their homes. We've done a lot of work for retailers around the world, and when the shabby chic thing was really popular a couple of years back, now leading into modern farmhouse theming and all that, people are really pulling some of that inspiration from there. But now what we're starting to see is a little bit more of the bold stuff from commercial and hospitality and retail. So but behind me is a product we call Raked. It's a grooved wall paneling. And we're starting to see some interest in that even for residential use. Bold colors, textures, slat walls, more intricate textures that form patterns like herringbones and chevrons and things are all starting to get used, rather than just the typical, let's put some barnwood on a wall, or let's just paint the wall red rather than tan. So people are getting a little more brave with things. And I think that's really, really great, because it's going to help them if they continue to work at home, it's going to help them to continue to feel inspired. Everybody's dining room table became a desk for the past 15 months. And after a while, you get tired of staring at the same thing you've been looking at all this time. So why not bring in something that's completely new and unique that you never would have thought of before, because you're not going to see it again in person for several months. And even though now we're opening up and things are getting a little bit more back to normal, I think it's still going to continue that way, because it's kind of trending in a way there to start going towards these more dynamic features in residential construction.
Yeah, thank you for that. I would have to say, being somebody who works from home, you do start to get a little tired of seeing the same thing over and over. And there is something to be said about bringing in, other design aspects to the space that you're in every single day, every single day and every single night. So definitely agree with that. Thank you. So great. And then Gabrielle, so coming off of COVID and the related shutdowns, people seem very eager to return to a sense of normalcy, which directly relates to the hospitality sector. How can your industry help prepare for a successful transition to what this new normal would be like?
I think, again, it goes back to feeling that you want to feel like you're in a safe and clean space, and you want to have the materials with all the antimicrobial coating and antimicrobial protection and antivirus protection, and just know that where you are, that the materials around you, your environment, that you're safe and feel confident in that. So I think that's what we have to do is help with that.
Yeah, I totally agree with that too. So thank you for that. And I feel like these past few questions we've been talking about COVID, it's like everywhere around us, but it is exciting to see that we can all kind of have a little bit of a sense of relief knowing, you know, things are starting to open up a little bit and everyone's being conscious and healthy. So I think that's great. And, you know, we've been going through these questions so quickly, so feel free to step in with any other feedback you have, but I do have a group question for everyone. So I'd love to hear from each of you. This is specific about some of the favorite projects that you've worked on there at your company internally. So can you speak a little bit about one of your favorite projects that you worked on in this space and what made this project unique? So Angela, if you want to go first.
Sure. So we are currently working on a project that's part of the Kentucky Bourbon Trail. So it's down south and it's actually a bourbon distillery. And we are renovating an entire campus in Kentucky. If anyone's ever been down there, there's, you know, you can drive a few miles and pass by like dozens of distilleries, almost like Napa wine country. And so we're working with a brand that is kind of a heritage brand. They've been around for a while, and just kind of like how the craft beer industry exploded and some of the like older veterans were seeing like, oh, these new guys have really amazing spaces. The same thing is happening with bourbon. And so we're taking this distillery that's been around for over 200 years and we are renovating their entire campus. So we're renovating like 8 buildings on campus. We're building a brand new restaurant for them. They're really trying to create this brand experience for their customers. So to the locals who know this brand as it is, they're trying to create this new experience for them when they go out and want to, you know, show their friends who come down to Kentucky. It's going to bring people down there that maybe are going on a bachelor trip or something. I mean, I think it's meant to kind of engage people from all walks of life and to really showcase this brand and how special it is. So there'll be tours, there's a restaurant, there's like kind of this big brand experience welcome center when you first get there. And we're doing, you know, everything from branding to architecture to design to graphics to even master planning with a whole host of consultants as well. We're not doing all of that, but it's a really exciting project, and where it's still under construction, so we can't really divulge who it is, but we're very excited when it does open up to share it, and hope that everyone gets a chance to see it.
Yeah, that sounds great. I've never been down to Kentucky, and I would love to, you know, experience, you know, all that state has to offer, but this awesome project that you're talking about too. And you know, it really is something available for everybody. I love that.
It's really beautiful down there. I went down over the winter and didn't realize it snowed in Kentucky, and it does. But it had just snowed, and I was driving through like the forest, and the trees were all covered. It was beautiful. So
lovely.
If you don't like
well, hopefully when this is finished, they give all of you a tour and let you kind of see what you've created. So
I know.
So great. So, okay, Gabrielle, I'll go to you next. So your favorite project and what really made that project unique?
One of my favorite projects that I worked on, it was the MORTARR Hotel, and that's right in it's on Park Avenue in Manhattan. So it's right there in, you know, the urban jungle, as you would say. And the whole idea behind the design vision was to create a contemporary urban retreat with this Turkish spa-like influence. So we used from the old world materials like dark hardwoods for all the guest rooms and the meeting rooms. And then we used this beautiful mother of pearl in the spa. And then we did this custom teak ceiling in the spa pool. So it really created this serene boutique hotel right in the middle of the city, and it was really fun to go through all of the rooms for that space and choose the materials that would speak to that artistry of it. So.
Yeah, that sounds really relaxing, you know.
Really peaceful.
Yes.
Like you never know that you were just walking out of a city street and walking into this like Turkish spa. It was really phenomenal. Yeah.
And I feel like in the hustle and bustle of a big city, you need some relaxation. You know what I mean? So that's great. Well, thank you. And then Jered, question goes to you. Favorite project and your favorite, and what made that project unique?
So on the hospitality side in particular, one of my favorites that we've done recently was the Graduate Hotel in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And we're the kind of company that very rarely says no. And sometimes that really bites us, but that's who we are. We are always up for the challenge. So this required about 25,000 square feet of reclaimed gymnasium flooring, which obviously does not come from just one gymnasium. That's actually 6 different gymnasiums we pulled from on this. But bringing that in, getting it all processed, keeping track of them because you get different profiles, different colors, different finishes and everything on these different gymnasium floors. So we had to keep them all separated and tally the quantities so they knew how many rooms they could do with each one of them and get them distributed around the job site. And then COVID happened. Right at the end of production, we ran into COVID. So we had to make sure our shop staff was safe. We had to make sure that they were safe on the job site. We had to have trucking companies that were willing to drive across state lines, which was actually very hard to find right at the beginning of this whole thing. But we did it and we managed to pull it together. We ended up getting at the tail end of the project. They decided to change up the lobby and do a reclaimed oak floor in the same pattern as the Boston Celtics floor. So it was done in a pattern throughout the whole lobby space, and it really ties it together. You walk in there and you don't quite catch all the little details like the paint spots on the floors in the guest rooms or the pattern. But when you really stand back and look at it, it goes back to what I said earlier. It's that immersion. You're all of a sudden immersed in this space, which is all about basketball. The whole place is all about basketball. And it's just a really cool project because it's so unique. And I don't think anybody has ever done something on that scale with that kind of a floor before. And I don't know that they will do it again, but it was certainly a challenge for us that we really enjoyed being a part of.
Yeah, that's great. And I can't believe all that happened right before, last March. I mean, that's crazy. Yeah. You were still able to continue with it.
Yeah, it was tough. New York State got completely closed down for several weeks. And thankfully, we were right near the end of it. And we were able to get back to it and get things delivered right on, really not too far off a schedule, honestly. So worked out pretty well.
And I have to say too, someone anonymous just provided a little bit of feedback that it's so interesting listening to all of you explain these projects. And it kind of got me thinking, it's like, as a consumer, you may not realize all of the intricate details that really went into the thought and the planning behind these spaces. It's almost like we need, one place we can go. You know how you use Yelp for reviews and use Google to find out other things? It's almost like we need to know the true detail and the meaning behind something. It sounds so wonderful. Yeah, and they did say, where can they see all these projects and stay up to date on them? And obviously I have to plug Mortar there. She has a Mortar profile to keep it up to date, but I would also recommend their websites and following these companies on social media. Social media is probably the #1 place to see, projects as they're coming to fruition and the true thought behind them, because you could be a little bit more free, with your social media and how you're posting things.
Yeah, we find it's great on the social media side at Pioneer Millworks. We share a lot of pictures that aren't the clean, pristine, finished shots, because sometimes the behind the scenes pictures taken during installation and all that are just as informative to the customer and to the designers on how things are going. So. Yeah.
Well, and you all are great storytellers. I truly feel like I was experience all of that. Now we just have to do a tour of all 3. So I don't know who's going to fit that bill, not me, but it would be great to be able to do that. So great. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of that. I think we're a little bit early here. So we're only halfway through, but I did receive another question in our Q&A. So I'll go ahead and ask you that. So how do the panelists see flexible or separate spaces in dining areas continuing? Is this just a COVID trend, or is this going to continue to be a consumer expectation? What are your thoughts on that? If anyone would like to take it, or all of you can.
I think a lot of restaurants, what we're going to see now is people are going to want to be hosting events. We've all been hosting events in our backyards, you know, with our close friends or whatever. But I think people are going to want to be hosting events again, and maybe looking for more private dining space that's, you're still out and experiencing this wonderful restaurant, but you're a little secluded from other people in the space. And so there's still this sense of comfort that you're with your, you know, your group of 10 or whatnot, and you have your own space that's just yours. So it's kind of like that in between from going from being home to being in a social setting. So I think we're going to see a lot more private spaces, and you know, for an existing restaurant that doesn't have 4 walls, I think kind of, you know, segmenting furniture a little bit. You could do that with a booth or a banquette, kind of like separating the space that way. And I think we're definitely going to see more booths, maybe see less communal tables just for the time being. But I think, people love their little areas and kind of the comfort of having a space that's yours. But we are still craving to kind of get out there and experience everything.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. Gabrielle, Jered?
Yeah, well, like maybe like behind me is the Canopy Hotel, which is the Hilton in Scottsdale. And so that's the lobby area, and they created this space. So it's for the, you know, so people can come down and work or read or whatever, but they still have their own sort of space, but it's still open, right? So I feel like that is going to be a constant theme, like Angela was saying, like they want to feel like they can go out and about, but still also have their own, somewhat of their own space, right?
Yeah. I know. I wonder how long it's going to take to start to feel comfortable around strangers again out in public. You know, when you walk into a space, you know, I still personally feel like I'm like dodging people, but I wonder how long it will take to feel comfortable doing that again. So Jered, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I just actually, we took our first family vacation in a year and a half. We just came back from Disney World, and the amount of plexiglass that separates you from other people is pretty astounding down there. And I'm sure everyone's on the same boat with that. You can't wait to get that sort of thing out of design, period, and not have to even think about it. But I think that the point about the booths becoming more popular is definitely going to be front and center, because as a restaurant, you have to maximize the number of people you can put into that space. And you can't do that when you have a communal table and you can only seat people at half of it. So what I've seen in a couple of concepts recently is where the booths maybe are a little bit taller in the back, not all the way, not like 6 feet tall, but tall enough so that you can't see the back of the person behind the person you're facing. And that way there's just a little more protection or perceived protection between the spaces, but you're not completely separating it off like it's a separate little room in there. So I think that sort of thing is great. And the use of screens and other minor partitions that aren't solid is still going to come into play there, because it's going to keep people separated without actually forming a solid wall that they're closed off behind.
Yeah. Thank you. And, I'm glad that you were kind of talking about a little bit of like the trends that we're seeing. Someone came in, another question we'd had is they'd love to hear from each of you, what other trends that you're actually seeing and what are you anticipating for what this future is going to be like. Any other like feedback on those trends or what you think what we might see out there?
I think in the hotel space, I think a lot of places adapted to having more of those like communal amenity offerings were being put in the rooms themselves. So every room was outfitted with gym equipment, and the mini bars maybe had all the ingredients to make your own cocktail. And things that like you can still experience the same things that we could before, but you're doing it on a more personal level. And it doesn't feel like, you're stuck in your room and there's not much going on. But I think it's more about creating that experience in a different way. And I think we're kind of like framing it in that sense. I think we're going to see a little bit more of that in the hotel sector, specifically.
Yeah. Gabrielle, any thoughts on that?
I think really, again, just the outdoor spaces. I think they're going to have a lot more attention on the outdoor spaces and try and create experiences out there, whether it be, a craft or make some, you know, you have your own separate space to make your own drink or something like that, whether it's in your room or, hey, we have this private little area outside or something like that. I think it's going to bring more attention to the outdoor space and have that feel. What I see.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Anything else, Jered, on trends?
Yeah, I think to couple onto the outdoor spaces, I think it's going to be interesting to see how we approach the materials that are used in those spaces. As I mentioned earlier, you know, taking the same color palette that a restaurant uses indoors and trying to translate that outdoors without having it be something that is plastic or that's, you know, completely indestructible, like wood, like what we deal with, is going to be really challenging. But we're doing a lot of research behind the scenes to try and find finishes that can be rejuvenated and maintained by the ownership of the restaurant or the hotel, but that also will bring that character into the outdoor environment. And I think that that's going to be something we're going to see not just in the restaurant and hotel realms, but I think overall public spaces in general are going to see a lot more of that push to make things feel like you can gather here and it's a space. It's not just in the middle of a park, for example. Maybe it's a trellis or pergolas, things like that, but it's something that down the line could be adapted to be used in a new way if it was needed to. Like Angela said about closing up. Yeah, exactly. Yep. So it's just a matter of thinking about adaptability in ways that I don't think we have before. And now we've kind of gotten this reality check for the past 15 months of maybe we're going to have to do this again. Maybe it's not for the same reason, but maybe we'll have to do something like that again. And we need to be thinking ahead.
Yeah, maybe it's an opportunity to try something new. Like you're saying, like if you don't want to match the aesthetic inside, which it's, you know, it's an opportunity to almost have like a pop-up setting outside and try a new concept. I mean, I think the idea of like virtual restaurants and ghost kitchens is interesting, but having a place to kind of like call that home without having like such a big presence, like having this cool little patio outside that serves like fun tacos out of a food truck kind of thing, and it has its own kind of like brand identity apart from like what's happening inside the restaurant, is really fun. And I think also, Jered, to your point about kind of people in their homes wanting to be a little bit more bold with their design, I think in general, we probably, even in the commercial sector, are thinking of that as well. And in food as too. I mean, there's the side where we want to be sustainable and, you know, and think about our food in that sense. But then there's the side that's like, we want to go all out and have these crazy desserts and have, you know, just like the Roaring 20s. I think that kind of resurgence is coming back now as well. And so that means like we're going to have all these decadent desserts and decadent food, and you're going to be served like tater tots in a crystal bowl, you know, things like that. Like I think it's over the top, but I think like we want to feel special in that way. And I think that in service and also in design, I think we're going to see a lot of that trending.
Yeah, because people still have that desire to travel and go out and experience life. And you really have to figure out a way to make that, you know, confident to do that and comfortable and excited.
Yeah.
Right. Give them a reason to, right? I don't have crystal bowls in my house. I mean, some people do, but I don't. But I would love to go.
Well, would you put tater tots in them if you did?
Yeah, I would.
Yes, of course.
Yes. Well, I love that too, because as people are ready to burst out of their homes and, you know, start doing things again, it's it's back to that experience of it. It's making the experience something to remember, something to go back to and to tell other people about, word of mouth. So, and, you know, I did get another question in here too about antimicrobial products or materials. And I know we had chatted about that a little bit before, but any feedback from any of you about what's popular or what's being used in this industry? Just your feedback on what you feel is most popular.
In terms of materials that have it, I mean, there's porcelain, there's luxury vinyls, I mean, we can really apply to an antimicrobial coating to many materials to make it safe for everybody. Yeah.
I think the use of materials like copper that are inherently like bacteria resistant is also interesting to use something that's inherently healthy. I think we're going to see a resurgence in that as well. And also, I'm sure what kind of goes along, Jered and Gabrielle, with your products is like kind of a relearning of how to clean them. Once they're in the space, like, okay, now what do? We can't just pour bleach on everything.
Right.
So like kind of updating our cleaning guidelines and making sure that, you know, we're making sure everything is safe for the customers, but we're also making sure we're, you know, holding the integrity of the materials too, so that they can withstand the test of time, which I mean, is also sustainability to make sure that it's durable.
Right. And like at ASI, we created a whole new header for it, for our features and benefits that for health and wellness. And it clearly says what material has the coating and the anti-virus protection and all of that. So that was something that we really, we met the demand for that with the health and wellness.
Yeah, and that last question about what materials are anti-microbial, I know I've personally been hearing that that question so much more frequently, even in my role here at Mortar. So I think that's, you know, it's just such a relevant question. And, you know, Angela, you spoke about copper, and personally, that was the only one that I really knew which had those properties. So it's great to hear, though, that it's actually, you can add a coating to other things too, depending on what you'd like your space to look like. I didn't know that. So that was good. Great information. So, well, thank you so much, everybody. I really appreciate the three of you being here and being willing to kind of speak on this panel. And I think, you know, people just really love to hear feedback directly from you. You know, what are your thoughts? What are your opinions? You know, what have you seen out there? And I've been getting so many questions on just where you see trend going. And it's like, I feel like we could do a part 2 and just give your feedback on what looks cool, what's out there, and what do you see coming. So really appreciate you all being here. And for everyone out there who's watching and listening, remember this is being recorded. We'll go ahead and send this out to you. I'll also in the follow-up email be sending email addresses for our panelists. So if you have any direct questions, feel free to reach out. Another thing to connect on LinkedIn. I believe I went ahead and connected with the three of you right away. So I can always see what you have going on, what's going on with your company. So I definitely recommend. And, you know, follow Mortar on social for more information on upcoming webinars and what's going on. So thank you so much, everyone. And I hope everyone has a great day.
Thank
you very much, Lindsay.
Thank you.
Take care.